But look at these little guys. Hey guys, it's Bill from Linden, Tennessee. This has nothing to do with lawnmowers or Volkswagen. We've got 8 chickens, 1 rooster. Oh, 7 chickens, 1 rooster. And about a month or so, 2 of these hens started getting broody, sitting on eggs, and then a third one joined in. And we got baby chickens now. So I'm sorry for being a dork here, but this is just really cute. And they like mealworms, so. Okay. All right, on to more serious things. I got my gear set in, and this is a 38% overdrive. And what it consists of is a new, up in here, I already installed it, pinion gear that replaces this old one. You can kind of see the difference. It's pretty significant difference. And then, what do you call this? A spur gear, and a new one for that. So the old one was a 12 pinion and 84 spur gear, and the new one has a 15 pinion, 65 spur gear. This worked out to 7-to-1, and this is not 7-to-1. Hold on. Well, that's how much it is. So that's kind of a difference, and really the point of that is from the factory, high gear on these things, according to tractor data, top speed was like 6 or 7 miles an hour, and that's fine, but I want it faster. They do actually make a 48% overdrive, and I didn't know about that when I bought this. But I'm not sure I would have got it anyway. I think 38 is going to be fine. That should give me a top speed into, into the teens maybe. I hope anyway, because this motor is going to spin faster than an engine did, and I don't know. We'll see. But anyway, I installed it, and that was kind of a pain in the butt. This is what's called a 2-piece pinion, and this part here is not machined from this here. So like this one, this is just machined from 1 piece. Well, this one's in 2 pieces. So this pinion gear is splined to this drive shaft here. So you put this pinion gear in first, then you put this part in from the top, and it's got the bearings on it, and then there's a captured bearing in this case here. But because this gear is too big to fit through this hole, there's like a little ridge for the bearing to sit on. And this gear won't fit through that ridge. So you got to put this part in first and put this part. But this gear is also tall. I don't know if it's taller than that one. I didn't measure it, but it's tall. And that means that you have to cut some material from the bottom of this. And you can use a cutoff wheel, and I did. That'll get you about halfway back. But from there, you got to get a little more creative. What I ended up doing was going to work and using one of those little angle grinders and put a little 2-inch cutoff wheel on that. Put the 2-inch cutoff wheel in here, put the arbor down, screw, attach the cutoff wheel to the arbor, and then try and go after it. But 2 inches was actually too big because the arbor was hitting the back of this case here. So I had to take and grind that 2-inch down to about a 1.5 inch. And then I was able to get the arbor back far enough that I could get the leading edge of the cutoff wheel back far enough that I could munch away at this back part. So I got this all flat. And then while it was back there, I went ahead and turned it up and down and up and down, kind of like a hone, and chewed away at this back, on the back there. So anyway, kind of a pain in the butt, but it's in there now. And next step is I'll get that seal back installed. I'll put some RTV on there. This is just the old seal, but apparently these don't leak, and this one didn't leak, so no reason to think it will. I'll put some RTV on there just to make sure nothing gets out, but the oil level sits at about right here, and anything that goes up there is splash anyway, so it's not gonna leak. But yeah, so I'm gonna put this back on to the transmission, and then that'll be all back together. And then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna get these tires off, pull that back that back cover off, and pull these axles out, and then go ahead and clean up these axle tubes and clean up the whole thing. Just hit it with a wire wheel and a little bit of elbow grease, I'm not going to take it down sandblast. I'm not going to sandblast it like I did the frame, but I am going to clean it up a little bit, and then I can put it back in the frame, put the front, clean up the front axle, do sort of the same thing with it. Whenever I sandblasted all this stuff at work, I only got 2 bags of sand, and that this frame pretty much took care of that. I got a little bit done on this undercarriage, and I got the ends of those axles blasted too. But I need to take care of that a little better. It's still dirty. The problem with this is whenever you aim the sandblast nozzle into those cutouts, all of that sand just comes back and hits you in the face, and that sucks. So anyway, but that's what I'm up to for the next day or so, and I'll catch you later. Well, I'd say this is probably going to be one of the biggest accomplishments of this weekend. I got this thing painted. Now, this is just a rattle can job, and it's sort of a good from far sort of a paint job. I'm not looking for like show quality here, but I mean, it will go to shows, but it won't be like quality restoration kind of stuff. But that's good enough for this thing. I'm sure there's a great reason why I shouldn't have painted this yet, and I just don't know what it is yet. But I will find out, and probably is going to involve me having to scratch this up really, really bad, because it's going to be on jacks and off of jacks and moving around everywhere. But I think it'll just be the bottom that gets scratched up, and the rest of it will be fine. Now, one reason I probably shouldn't have done it yet is because when I paint this whole, well, the rest of this thing, I'm going to be painting it as a rolling chassis, probably. Although I might just do it like I did with the other Cub and just paint the frame as its own individual self and then just bring it all together. In fact, that's probably what I'll do, because then that will make it less stupid that I just painted this now. Yeah, good idea. Another thing that I did is I converted these to lug nuts, lug studs, instead of lug bolts. I find that really, really annoying, those lug bolts. Where do we have one? Right here. Because it makes it really hard to get the tire on, especially if, like, I'm going to eventually have, these are 8.5-inch wide tires. I'm going to have 12-inch wide tires, and they're going to be filled with liquid. So they're going to be really heavy, you know, a good 100 pounds a piece at least. And, you know, trying to get that to get started into the axle flange there, you know, while trying to hold a tire in the right spot is just awful. So converted that over to lug studs. Back in the garage for a 4-day weekend, Thanksgiving weekend. I hope you all have a good Thanksgiving weekend. My wife is actually headed down to go visit her folks, so I'm kind of batching it. So I foresee a bunch of spaghetti, macaroni, and cheese, and pizza in my future. In the meantime, I'll back out here in the garage again, start putting this thing back together. Last week I went ahead and painted this thing up for no particular reason. It's probably an accident, and I'll probably figure out why later. I've already scratched it once right there, darn it. But that's inevitable. This paint is so slow to dry. It's the rattle can stuff from Tractor Supply, the Cub Cadet orange. But and so I'm putting this thing back together a little bit. You can see my new couplers. I had a whole bunch of comments that the Lovejoys and straight couplers were a terrible idea, and the Lovejoy I knew about, and the coupler I had considered, but after hearing people say it, it's, you know, kind of a smack yourself in the head. Yeah, of course that's a bad idea. And so that's the new thing there. And this has got quite a lot of there's quite a lot of movement in here. You can see it, and yeah, that's a much better solution to that. That'll last forever, and doesn't care about how fast it goes, and it's got a lot of holding power, and it won't wear out. Up front, I've got a new clutch situation. The other one was a mechanical clutch, and this is just a electric clutch off of Amazon. I picked it mostly because of the mounting method. The other ones, they've got like three sort of pucks, I guess, that were on something that was on the the engine, or I don't know, but it would make it more difficult for me to mount this thing. So I picked this one because it's got these two little convenient things that I can make a spacer for, and then just kind of weld this to my base plate of the motor. And the way this little dude works is I've got a little power supply hooked up to it, and you crank up the power, and it's got a little 12-volt connection there. And then whenever you want the PTO to work, there you go. You put power to the clutch, and then it goes. And when you want it to stop, you take power off. And those little deals there act like a brake to make the PTO stop. And yep, that's how that works. So, and that works pretty good. So I'm pretty happy with that. And I think that's going to be the way to do this. I'm going to put that on there and see how that lines up with my mule drive. At some point, I'm going to need to get the mower deck in here and under here, which means I need to start putting these shafts back in there and getting all that stuff kind of semi-working. But before I do that, I need to extend these. I need to extend this arm. You know, remember I added a little bit of clearance, a little bit of spacer right here so that I could have some breathing room between those two. But that was with the other clutch. This clutch, I might not need that. Hold on. Yeah, so there's my two clutches. Yeah, I said I might not need that, but as it turns out, I may need more. So I might not have enough. The new one is clearly taller than the old one. But it's also got a bigger pulley on it, which means my blades will be going much, much faster. I do believe this is the standard size for Cub Cadets and others. It's like a 4-inch or something like that, and this one was 3. This was just the drive for that walk behind brush hog, and this is an actual PTO pulley for a mower. So this will increase my tip speed on my mower, which should maybe theoretically or something make it cut better, but it'll also make it much more noisy. So that kind of sucks. But yeah, it looks like it may be a good thing that I put that spacer in there. That distance may narrow, but anyway, I think that's going to be a better solution. It'll be a whole lot easier. With this one, I was going to have some sort of a linear actuator or a solenoid or something to pull on a little arm, where the little arm's at. Oh. Yeah, that little arm there. I was going to need some sort of an arm, or an actuator or something to pull on it. But this one's just a 12-volt signal, and that'll be much cooler. And what I could even have it instead of having that clutch activate while the motor's spinning, I could actuate that clutch first and then spin this motor up slow, and just kind of save that clutch and save a little bit of, I don't know what I'd be saving, but anyway, talking out loud right now. So that's kind of what we're going to be up to this weekend, and yeah, we'll catch you in a little while. Something that I noticed, and it's kind of obvious when you think about it, say the distance between that pulley and the frame rail, and that pulley and the right side and the other side frame rail is different. This whole mule drive is offset, which makes sense because the entire engine is offset, and you can tell that it is because the input shaft of the transmission is moved over, and I had to move this whole motor over. So I'm going to have to do the same thing here. And I also suspect that I had to move this motor down a little bit. I cut a little bit out of the bottom of that adapter, or that motor mount there. So I'm probably going to need to do the same thing over here. I think I only took about 1/8 of an inch off of there, but you can tell that those motors are different at different angles. So this motor is going to have to go down a little bit, and it's also going to need to shift to the right side of the tractor, which is kind of obvious, but you can tell that kind of lines up pretty sweet. And then this one would too if that pulley wasn't adjusted out for tension. But yeah, and then there's still a good inch gap between those two. So this is the one that really works hard when it's mowing, but Yeah, I think that's going to be just fine. Okay, that's all. All right, I think I have made an executive decision. It's kind of based on laziness and it's kind of based on convenience. There's probably a fine line between those two. I think I'm going to get rid of it. I'm going to ditch the whole idea of having a front end loader on this. And there's a number of reasons why. Well, first off, I'll show you. I took this part out, and theoretically, that should reduce the distance. It should increase the, I should be able to move this motor that far forward, but the reality is the clutch doesn't sink all the way onto that shaft as far as I thought it would. But the reason I'm thinking about doing that is if I can move this motor forward, that means I can get rid of that extension that I put in there. That means I don't have to increase the length of my steering shaft. I don't have to increase the length of the bar right there for the mule drive. I don't really need power steering anymore. I don't have to worry about getting wider, more expensive, liquid-filled rear tires, possibly with weights on it, and then also an accessory weight hanging off the back of the thing. I don't really need to worry about upgrading the front hubs to handle all the weight. And I don't need to worry about what I'm going to do with that thing and this little piece up here, because with the frame extended, this piece sticks out in front of the grill and it looks kind of weird. I'd have to do something with that. There's just a whole bunch of things. Also, when the seat is back on this, there's going to be some arms that would come up that the lift arms attach to, the top pivot, and then the hydraulic cylinder on the bottom. All that kind of gets in the way of getting on and off the vehicle. And there would be all of the complication of the hydraulic systems and the valves and the lines and fittings and leaks and just stuff, just all that stuff. And the only reason I would want to do that is because occasionally, every once in a while, I might need to pick up a load of gravel and move it somewhere else. And I've got a front end loader on my Kubota, and I think in the last 6 years I've maybe used that 8 times. I don't know. So going through all this trouble and headache and extending the time to do this, to finish this project for something that I'm going to use, 1% of the time, just seems kind of dumb. So I'm not going to do that. My wife suggested that maybe once this is done and once the Volkswagen's done, that I could make one of the little mini skids, one of those mini skids. They've got little buckets on them with interchangeable doodads that go on the front of the bucket. If you've never seen those, check them out on YouTube. They're kind of incredible. They can lift a lot of weight for what they are, and they can do a lot of work. So that, I think that's where I'm going to go with this. I'm not going to do a loader anymore. But like I said earlier, taking that pulley out didn't really draw this back as far as I hoped it would. This spacer, this extension that I made is about 1 3/4 inches, and the distance between here is about 1 5/8 inches. So that's not really enough. I could move this clutch back about 1/2 inch, but that would require cutting 1/2 inch off of the snoot of this motor. I'm not afraid to do that, but I want to noodle over this for a little while just to make sure I want to do that. Because once I cut that front of that thing off, that's it. It's over. No more. I think I'm just going to kind of study on this for a little while, as they say here in the South. And I'm just going to move this over to the side until I make a decision if I want to do that or not. And we're just going to put this Cub on pause for a little while so I can think about it. So not too long after I thought I was done with this video, it occurred to me, if I'm not going to have a hydraulic pump on this with its own little belt, I don't need a clutch anymore. So I can just put an appropriately sized pulley on the front of this, directly driven off of the motor, and mount it as forward as I need it, giving me all kinds of space between the drive motor and the PTO motor. So I can definitely get rid of that space between those two. So yeah, that makes that a whole bunch easier. Cool. Thanks for watching. See you next time.